My first question is a rather cheeky one, really. How often do you actually use a bus? 2 officers? So we're talking a lot about buses, but how often do you as individuals regularly use a bus? Because I think that would be interesting in understanding the answers to some of this. But I have a couple of other questions as well. I love what's being done in terms of attempting to green the bus stations. My worry, this is a Kirklees Council really rather than a combined authority challenge, is, well, I'm not sure actually, but what's in the budgets for maintenance of those greened areas? Because invariably what happens is after 12 months, they're litter strewn, there's nobody who has accountability or responsibility ownership, and very quickly what looked like a very attractive area becomes a very unattractive area. So I don't think it's worth investing a significant chunk to improve our bus stations if you aren't going to put the money aside to make sure that those greened areas are adequately maintained. There is somebody who has accountability for ensuring, and I mean, it's a shame Colin's left because I do this to Colin all of the time. I walk around the town centre and take photographs of things and send them to him and say, is this really what we think of our town? So if you're going to do this and we spend all of this money, who's taking ownership? Who's put the money in the budgets? And is there a clear line that says this is the funding to maintain the state of these bus stations as they are? Because we know when you've got a lot of people going through a place when it's quite transient, they're not spending a lot of time there, a fair few of them will be eating on the way, you'll get loads of litter, you'll get loads of stuff dumped. So who's taking ownership of that and making sure it looks like those photographs show and won't actually, after 12 months, look tired and neglected? And there was, and I'm not sure which, I think it was Dewsbury bus station said they were going to increase retail usage within 5 years. I'd be interested to know how they're going to achieve that. So I think one of the challenges we have in all of our town centres, to be honest, is there is too much retail space. So actually what we're needing to do is reduce the amount of retail space. So how are we going to increase the usage of the retail space within the bus stations themselves? So I think that might be rather optimistic. And I represent a Huddersfield ward, but a rural part of Huddersfield. We don't get much out of this. And we focused on these 3 bus stations. Was there any consideration given to how we can increase bus patronage and how we can improve the services for people that are at more of a distance? Because actually, I think, there's an argument to say that there ought to be some interchange or something as you come into Huddersfield from some of the rural areas. And I never see any thought or consideration to how that might be achieved. And that might increase patronage, it might increase the bus usage and the number of buses potentially that are going out into the rural areas, like the ones that I represent. So a few challenges and questions there, if I may, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Richard, do you want to take them?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Taylor. With regards to bus user experience, I can't speak for everybody here. I regularly use buses with my children, but coming into, as a local resident, coming into Huddersfield bus station, it's anecdotal, but it's not the most pleasant environment. And that's been very much part of our consideration in looking at the projects. And I think that's reflected in the consultation responses as well. So when the consultation events were carried out, a lot of work was done within the bus stations. So we were present pre-COVID, some subsequently that more detailed survey work with people who do use buses. I dare say most of the responses we've got probably are from bus users. That's where we've picked up a lot of the information from. So we're trying to pick up on that user experience. I think that, I know that has fed into the design work and the considerations that colleagues have set out. On the greening of the bus stations and revenue costs, it's a really key consideration. Thank you for raising it. And it's something that we have been working through. As we've gone from the kind of outline business case stage, that point where there's initial design that we think is likely to be pushed forward, that's allowed us to do some calculations of future revenue costs for maintenance. So when it comes to the canopy at Huddersfield bus station, that will very much fall within the mandate of Kirklees Council. and also Heckman White bus station, at least currently, because we own the land there, and we're likely to be involved in the running, or at least part running, of the bus station. So we've pulled together revenue costs for that, and we've reported that through our management team for consideration at future budget setting rounds. I may have to pass to a combined authority colleague on Dewsbury and the internal elements of Huddersfield bus station, but there is a whole team at the combined authority who run and operate bus stations who have their own revenue budgets for that. I dare say they will need supplementing moving forward for some of these infrastructure projects, but obviously that's a decision that rests with the combined authority and its budget setting process. I'll just check whether anybody wants to add a supplemental to that, if I may, Chair.
Sure. If there's any officers that need to come in to answer the questions, please feel free to raise your hand and I'll bring you into the conversation, not a problem at all. Councillor Taylor, do you want to come in back to that? Yep.
I was just going to, sorry, I was just going to come back on the on the greening one. Obviously, if the asset is owned by the combined authority and maintained, then we will be taking account of any maintenance and costs ongoing for anything green or anything like that on our side of the asset. But as part of the full business case stage, which we're moving into on all projects, it's about putting that maintenance and operational plan together and understanding what, trying to minimise maintenance costs. That's where we're looking at solar PV and other things like that. So we minimise the cost of maintenance because we know that revenue budgets are quite sparse, but we will be accommodating anything on the combined authorities asset will come under our maintenance operation.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, I think Councillor Taylor's got a supplementary.
Yeah, I just want to come back on a couple of points. On the surveys, we spoke mainly to bus users in the bus stations. I think you've missed a trick. If you want to increase bus patronage, you need to speak to people who aren't using buses, not the people who are. Because you need to find out why they're not using buses. If you find out why they're not using buses, you might find that you've got a different challenge in terms of if your objective is to increase bus patronage, you need to be talking to the people who aren't using buses, so you'd be better off spending your time in the car parks rather than the bus stations, because then you'd be talking to the people, like the people from my ward, that don't use the bus station because there aren't many buses to the bus station, and the times those buses aren't particularly suitable to enable them to commute to work, etc. So you're asking the wrong people the questions, you're asking the existing users. But if you want to grow the patronage, you need to speak to people who aren't using the buses. So I'd kind of suggest that if you're going to do any more engagement, public engagement, make sure you're widening that pool of people that you're talking to, so you're actually talking to the people who aren't. And just on the maintenance, I was specifically talking about the greened elements, because I could take you to places in this town, and I can take you to places across the district where we've done wonderful schemes and we've put in green facilities, but then they're not maintained and they look sad and they don't look. I'm glad to hear that we're putting the funding into the business cases. I'm much more interested in knowing who's the accountable officer, who's the person that I'll be able to go to when I see that those areas aren't being well maintained. Because I do worry, and it's not criticism of the combined authority, but you are Leeds based. So who's going to be there in Dewsbury every day looking to see that it is being well maintained? You look at that wonderful canopy across Huddersfield bus station. I know that's Kirklees rather than the combined authority. But those green roofs, they need a lot of maintenance. They need a lot of attention. It's not something that we can put into our maintenance contract, and once a month we're going to send somebody out to do some cleaning or some minor repairs. It's who's going to be the accountable people that are making sure they remain a really good, positive, sort of greened area that is attractive for people. And I think it's a lot more than just putting a sum of money in the business case. It's actually having those conversations internally about which department in Kirklees is going to be doing this. Who is it? Is it Parks and Open Spaces? I'm sure it's not going to be you guys, but who is that? And are they engaged? And have they got the resources? It's not just about the money, it's the people and the ownership, and they need to be physically there. I'll leave it at that, Chair, let others come in.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. And I think
Yeah,
you wanted to come in
back
to those.
Points. So from the operation of the combined authority assets, there'll be the station managers and the people on the site all doing those inspections and maintenance plans, and then the routine maintenance will happen. Sweeping, cleaning, all that kind of thing will happen as part of that operation. I was just going to come back on the customer side as well. Yeah, we've done the engagement with bus users in the bus stations to get a feel of what they feel needs improving in the bus stations. But I acknowledge, it's a really good point about how we engage with non-users, and what we want to do as part of these 3 schemes in Kirklees is use it as an opportunity to promote those game-changing facilities and actually try and encourage more. So there'll be more campaigns, more engagement as we go forward to build these things as well.
Oh, sorry, Chair. I think the point is, if you haven't asked them in the first place, you can promote all this, look at these game-changing changes I've made in the bus station. Those game-changing changes may not be the things that will encourage people to use the buses. So if you're not talking to the people, if your objective, which was up there, was to increase bus patronage, that's what you're trying to achieve. So it's no good saying, I've got a wonderful, bright, really nice-looking bus station, but if it doesn't meet the needs of the people who don't use buses, they ain't going to use it. So you need to go and talk to them before you start all these planned changes to make sure that what you're actually building is what, it's not, if I build it, they will come. We actually have to find out what it is that is preventing people from using buses today. And they're the things you need to be tackling with the bus stations, not just talking to the existing bus users. And of course they're going to say they're tired, they're dirty, they're a bit scruffy, we need to improve them. Of course they are. But that will not necessarily increase bus patronage. It won't persuade people who don't use buses today to use them if actually that's not the reason why they're not using them. So I think you really need to look at how do I get to people who don't use buses today and understand what's stopping them using buses if my objective is to increase patronage. If your objective isn't to increase patronage, absolutely fine. You build your business case on not increasing patronage. But if your stated ambition is that, you need to talk to people who don't use them.